and welcome to another Bruce Starr Show and another 80s golden age of comedy show. We are making great strides. We're getting a lot of great comedians, and more people are interested. Some top headliners, some middle guys, some openers. Man, we want to hear it all. And that's why we're doing the show 80s golden age of comedy. And today I have on a guy, he might not be as world famous as, say, Robin Williams or some of those people, but those in the comedy world that worked at the Improv for years and years and years all know Howard Allen. Howard, welcome to the show, my friend. I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thanks, Bruce, for having me. I appreciate it. And I'm not here to talk about Ron Jeremy's legal problems.
You know, it's funny.
You want to talk about comedy. So I'll just start riffing and you tell me when to stop.
No problem. You know, it's funny. Ron Jeremy came into when I was up in the 9200 Sunset building working with Howie Rapp. Ron Jeremy walked into my office and he wanted me to represent him as an actor, as a legitimate actor. And I felt a little bad, but I had to say no. And I think, but that was such a long time ago. He came in all, regular dressed, but I couldn't, I recognized him. I don't know how I recognized him because I never watched those, whatever he was doing. So I don't quite know how I recognized him.
Yeah, I knew him from the Improv, so that's it.
Oh, okay, that's right.
You want to talk about comedy? I don't know. I guess I can just start off with telling you about the first time I ever told a joke.
Hey, that's a great idea. Tell me about your childhood, Howard.
Well,
what was that like? And so many times when I speak to the comedians, they've gone through like difficulties more than the average guy that, I don't know, made them turn to comedy or acting or singing or whatever it was. What was your childhood like?
Well, it was not pleasant. It wasn't not bad, but just I was little and I had ADD, so teachers couldn't control me. I couldn't sit in a chair for more than 2.5 seconds. So I just used, and people picked on me, so I just used comedy as a tool because I couldn't fight them. So I just made fun of them. But what started me out, I guess, actually was I was about, I must have been 1953, 1954, and Eisenhower is president. And his nickname, I don't have to tell you, but maybe some people out there, his nickname was Ike. Now I'm in a doctor's office waiting to get in to see the doctor, which is a traumatic enough experience when you're young. And there's some kids running around in the waiting room, and this woman goes, "Now, Ike, cut that out." And I said, I pointed to the kid and I said, "That's the president?" And the place erupted. And they were all laughing. And it was like, I guess it's like a heroin user when you start, you get that high and you want to repeat that. So my entire life, I tried to reenact that, getting that laugh. And that's how my first joke ever happened.
So when some people graduated high school and went on to college or went on to doing whatever work it was, what was life like for you?
Well, high school I hated because they just tormented the hell out of me. And so when I went to college, it was like a party atmosphere. People liked me and nobody was complaining about how small I was or whatever. So I didn't really study, so I flunked out. And it's a bad time to flunk out because I got drafted. Now I'm in the Army for a couple of years and I come back and I'm reading a Time article about ADD, which nobody knew of when I was a kid. I mean, matter of fact, my parents thought I was a juvenile delinquent, sent me to military school in the 8th grade. So that's a good place for an ADD kid, structured. So I'm reading this Time magazine article about Ritalin. So I take it to my doctor, the same doctor that I told the joke about Ike. And he said, "Well, I think you're too old." I said, "Just give it to me." So he gave it to me, and I went from making A's and B's all the time in school, I could study. I could sit. So no big deal. I went to, graduated and all that stuff. Went to work, not thinking about comedy really, but, still telling jokes and, goofing off. And I went to Chicago selling costume jewelry and ladies' handbags. I had an office at the Apparel Center in Chicago. And I don't know, I think one day Groucho Marx had died. So I decided that we had a show week that week, and I decided to do Groucho Marx in my office the whole day that he had passed away. Because I really thought when I first saw him on You Bet Your Life, I said, now that's what I want to do. Smoke cigars and insult people.
Sounds great.
Yeah. So, Groucho was, the Marx Brothers, they were funny guys. So I did Groucho, and, I didn't think much of it. And somebody was talking to me about doing it. And they said, oh, you ought to go to this comedy club in Rosemont, Illinois, and do comedy. I go, really? I never thought about that. So, I don't know, a few weeks later, I said, I got up enough nerve to go up there. It was a comedy cottage. And the guy that owned it, his name was Big Al. And it wasn't a bad little place, but it was not, not the greatest place in the world. But it was out in Rosemont, which is on the way to the airport. So I get on an open mic night, and I'm waiting to go on. And the act before me, I don't know how to explain it exactly. It was two guys. One guy stood behind the other guy, and they put their hands. The guy behind him put his hands through his coat, and it looked like a midget act, but with crazy hands. So they had the microphone way down low, and the MC never got on stage. He just did it from off stage. Here's your next act, blah blah blah. You're up there. So I get up there, and I'm kind of dazed at the lights and everything, and I pick the microphone up and I twist it to get it to stay, and it falls back down. Now I got a ball of sweat going down the back of my neck, and I don't feel too good. So I pick it up again, I twist it, I lean into it, and I go, works like I do. Get it up and it goes right down. Walked off the stage, went outside, threw up, came back in the bar, sat down, ordered a vodka, and the bartender says, you've got great stage presence. You should keep doing it. If she hadn't said that to me, I'd have never done it again.
Wow. Very nice. Good. So then, how long did you toil out in the Chicago area?
What's that?
How long did you toil out in the Chicago area?
I did that once, and then I didn't think about doing it again, even though the bartender said I should have. And at the same time, the guy I went to college with when I first went to college called me up, and we had become friends. And matter of fact, I've known him now for 60 years. Called me up and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, not really too much. It was a bad time for selling costume jewelry. It was a recession in 76, 77." And he said, "Well, why don't you come back and help me run my campaign for Secretary of State?" So I came back to Indianapolis and worked on his campaign, and writing him a couple of jokes here and there. And there was no comedy clubs in Indianapolis. There was none. And there was a hippie bar, like a folk bar or something, and they had open mic night on Monday nights. And they had folk singers and stuff like that. So I went in there and I said, "Can I do comedy?" And the guy says, "Do whatever you want." So I started doing comedy, not knowing that you had to actually have an act. I just started telling jokes that I knew and doing my little Groucho thing. And this has nothing to do with the comedy, golden age of comedy. But so I'm doing that, and more people are seeing it in the audience, and Monday night open mic night's getting busier, and I'm getting laughs. It's pretty good. And more comics are coming by that lived in Indianapolis. As a matter of fact, Ray Combs came in. He was living in Indianapolis. And there was a group of us, and we had this comedy meeting on somebody's back porch or something, and Ray Combs was there and some other guys. And I'm doing it Monday nights. And what happened was there's, I don't know if you know about them or not, but Simon Properties is big shopping center developers out of Indianapolis.
No.
Their marketing guy saw me and said, calls me up and says, can you come in and talk to me about doing something at the malls? And I said,
Wow.
so I went in there and talked to him. He said, I want to do something with Groucho Marx. I said, well, give me a couple of days to write something up or think of something to do. And so I came up with this show called You Betcha Mall.
Nice.
When I did Groucho, had a piano player and a straight man. And they gave me a contract for a couple of years. And
Wow.
it was nice money. They fly me to these shopping centers.
Wow.
They'd have a contest on the radio that week, and they'd get the contestants that way. And then I just insult them, and we played a game, and they won prizes. The shopping center would donate prizes from the stores and whatnot. So that went on. And I said, I think I'm going to go to L.A. because that's where it's at. So one day I just decided to pack up my car and drove to L.A. And I had a friend of mine who moved there, and I talked to her and I said, can I stay with you guys for a while till I find a place, see what's going on? Because I don't think I had more than $300-400 on me. And I went, and the first job I got in Hollywood was at the Comedy Store with Mitzi, answering the phones on Sunday afternoons. I figured I worked my way right in there. So she would bring Paulie over and say, can you watch, Paulie?
Of course.
So Paulie would be running around the showroom or the building, making noise and causing trouble. He was about 7 or 8. And so I'd run out and try to find him, and the phone would ring, and there's nobody answered because it was her calling to make sure I was answering the phones.
Sure.
Finally, when I got back, she calls up. She goes, why aren't you answering the phone? So I go, because I'm chasing your son.
So how long did that last?
I must have worked there, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. And I auditioned for her, and she didn't like the first time I auditioned.
So you worked at the comedy club, which is, hey, I give you a lot of credit. I'm sure a lot of people were knocking on that door. What was that like?
I don't even remember how I got the job. I mean, I auditioned at the Comedy Store in Westwood. I remember standing in line at 4 o'clock in the afternoon to get 2 minutes of time at 10 minutes to 2. And I don't even actually remember how. Somebody must have told me that, she needed somebody to answer the phones on Sunday afternoon. I went over there, and I don't even think I talked to Mitzi. I think I talked to her manager or something. I don't remember. It's a long time ago. But I remember standing in line at the Comedy Store in Westwood, and Fritz Coleman was in line with me. I met him the first week I was in town. It was his first week in town.
Wow.
And, and being at the Comedy Store in Westwood, Sam and all of them were there.
Well, tell people who Sam is. Sam Kennison?
Sam Kennison, and we became good buddies. And, it was just fun times. But to get back to Mitzi, so I auditioned for her to be a regular, and she didn't like it. So I guess I'm working a couple more months answering the phones, and I asked her one day, could I audition again for her? Now get this, I was only getting like 2 minutes of time at 10 minutes to 2 at the Comedy Store in Westwood with a drunk guy and a guy asleep. So really, it was basically the same thing I did the first time with Mitzi, but I figured, I got a little more confidence. Well, she didn't like it. I heard her in the middle of my act. She was in the back going, it's the same act. So I get off stage and I said, what'd you think, Mitzi? And she goes, hey, I don't like it. So more Jerry Lewis than Mitzi there. But I was a little hot-headed at the time, and I just let her have it. and called her an unkind name. And she goes, Harris, throw him out. I go, oh, don't worry about Harris, I'm leaving. So she threw me out. And to follow up the throwing me out, 15 years later, I'm in a car with Jeff Valdez. You know who Jeff Valdez is?
No, I don't.
No, he's a producer, comedian, good comedian, had a comedy club in Colorado Springs. Anyway, so he said, we're driving around because we're buddies. And he goes, oh, shit, I forgot. I have a set at the Comedy Store. I said, well, just drop me off the Improv. I'll get my car and I'll go home. And he says, why? I said, because she threw me out of there 15 years ago. I'm not going back. So he says, oh, she's not going to remember. So I said, I don't know about that. So he says, come on, you'll go with me anyway. So we walk in the Comedy Store. First person that sees me is Mitzi. And we walk in, there she is, standing right there. She goes, didn't I throw you out of here? I go, yeah, I think you did, Mitzi. And she says, what do you, she asked me what I was doing, and I said I was here with Jeff. She just let it go. And that was the last time I think I saw her.
So what were you doing all those 15 years? Just regular straight jobs?
No, I finally I got, you audition anywhere you can. So I went to the Improv and started going there on open mic night with when Bruce Smirnoff was running it.
Okay.
Neighbor.
Yep. Yep.
And I got on a couple of times, and I auditioned for Mark. I wanted to be a regular. And Mark, of course, didn't like the act either. He says, too self-deprecating. And he'd never use me, he said. So a couple of days later, I'm at the Improv, hanging out, because that's where everybody hung out anyway. And Mark says, you want to work here? And I thought he meant on stage. I said, sure. Well, he meant as a doorman. So when we figured out what he was talking about, I said, yeah, sure, because I needed a job. I was working at a lighting store in Westwood during the day, and you're not making much money. And so I said, sure. So I've started out 2-3 nights a week with John Pate and Tony Edwards and me were the three guys basically working the club.
So you weren't the biggest, baddest doorman or security guard there, were you?
No. I threw a lot of people out of there, but I didn't physically do it myself. I told them they had to go, and if they didn't go, we had a 6'5" or 6'8" doorman, and first we had Lorenzo, and
oh my God, I remember him! Wow.
And he'd throw him out, but Lorenzo was a little. He was a Vietnam vet. And he was a little strange because he had to have his back to the wall. He couldn't have anybody sneaking up behind him.
He was a good guy. I haven't thought
about
Lorenzo
was a good guy, yeah.
In ages, but now that you're bringing him up, yeah, he was a good one.
Yep.
So you're now the doorman. Security.
I'm a doorman, seating people in the show, taking the velvet rope off the door and letting them in, and this, just grunt work basically. And I'm working 2 or 3 nights a week, and John Pate quit, and Tony Edwards quit, and Bruce Smirnoff was running Sunday night audition night, and he quit.
Wow.
So, and this has all happened maybe in, a couple of weeks. It wasn't all at once, maybe a month or so. So when all those guys quit, I was the senior doorman.
Whoa, ho, ho.
So I took over the Sunday night auditions, and I started working more nights. I quit the lighting store. So now I'm just working nights.
So who were you introducing when you were working that Sunday night? I bet you people ended up being pretty good eventually.
I can only think of about 2 or 3 guys that ever came out of the Sunday night auditions. That was a strange thing in itself. I'm sure that it was, I used to give the speech, I go, look, listen, guys, if you want to be a comedian, you got to have jokes. You got to make sure you have jokes. This is not a therapy session. You can't get up there and tell me all your problems and this and that, because that's not comedy. That's just sad. And I give that speech every week, and they just do the same thing. They would come up and tell me get on stage and say their problems, and I go, where are the jokes? So 50, 60 people would come to try to get on stage for 6 minutes, and so finally we just put everybody's name in a big ice bowl and drew them out, because Bud had put in regulars to make the show a little more pleasant for the customers. So it'd be a regular and an auditioner, a regular auditioner, and that's how it went.
Did any of the comedians befriend you? We talked. Bruce was a good guy. He was a friendly guy. I'm sure he made friends with you and any of the other guys.
Yeah, Bruce was a friendly guy. No, I knew everybody. Eventually, I worked my way into where I was emceeing. Bud would start the show, and then halfway through it, he'd go, take over. Oh, how would you take over? And I probably had more stage time at the Improv than anybody, because I was up most every night. Not that I could, go on and on, because they had a show to run, and they expected me to run the show on time, which was kind of impossible sometimes with some of the comedians, because they were very selfish. Not to name anybody, but there's, just lots of, I knew everybody, and basically everybody knew me.
So did those experiences continue outside the Improv, or was it just strictly Improv relationships?
Oh, no, I used to have, Richard Lewis and I used to have once or twice a week, we'd go to Joe Allen's and have lunch or dinner, basically lunch, because I was working at night. And, Richard became a good buddy. Bobby Kelton, Larry David and I used to have brunch at John O'Groats on Pico there, like maybe every other day or every day. I can't even remember now.
So tell me a little bit about Larry, because I want to hear about all those guys, your own personal opinions and your perceptions. And there's no way for the people watching this to learn more about them than through people like you who are their friends.
Well, Larry's Larry. I don't know how to say. Larry would get on stage and he had some great material, but nobody understood Larry. They just did. The audience had no clue as to what this guy was or what he was doing or anything. And he had these great bits, and the comics would be in the back and they'd be screaming, and the audience would be going, ooh, and he would get pissed off and throw the microphone down, go, fuck you, and throw the microphone down. I don't know how many microphones I had to replace because of Larry David. Bud would constantly tell me, don't let Larry throw the microphones down. I go, how do I stop him? So Larry, I don't know how to describe Larry. Larry was just in a different wavelength than everybody else. And I don't think he's changed. He hasn't changed. It's just the perception of Larry has changed. It's like the old Groucho Marx story. Groucho says, people laugh because I say it. And it's not all things I say are not funny, but people laugh because I'm Groucho Marx. Well, I think people like Larry David now because he's Larry David. He used to complain at those brunches we'd have that, nobody would help him in Hollywood when they made it. And then, of course, he made it, and he wouldn't help anybody.
What about Richard Lewis? He was a guy that I got to know a little bit. As a matter of fact, we got along great. Tell me about Richard from your point of view.
Richard was very neurotic, but he was a good guy. I mean, once you get past the neurosis, he was just a good guy. I don't know, we just hit it off because I'm probably a little neurotic myself. So we were two neurotics sitting having lunch, and we do it a lot. He was just a good guy. Bring him up, and he'd come off stage and he'd go, "How'd I do?" I go, "Richard, they were screaming." They said, "What do you mean? How'd you do?" You know, seriously, how'd I do? I go, "You killed. What do you want?" You know.
You know, it's funny. Someone took a picture of Richard and I. We were standing near the entrance to the walkway, the runway to the main room. And, you know, I have a tendency to kind of do this, you know, it's just, and then Richard with his black jacket also had a tendency to do this with his.
Oh yeah, he did that too.
And some people, all of a sudden we're talking and we're both kind of going like this. And there were people just laughing at us. And I was wondering what they were laughing at. And then Richard walked away. I said, what was so funny? Was, you know, you were both, you know, kind of going like this. And they were getting a kick out of that.
Yeah. Well, Richard was basically like his dog. His mother wouldn't let the dog in the house, wouldn't let the dog out of the house. Midair was the only place for the dog. That's like Richard. Midair is the only place for Richard.
And, you know.
He's doing well. Larry's got him on the show, and he's doing good. I haven't talked to him in years, but, you know, when you lose touch, you know, sometimes it's not good.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the internet has helped me keep in touch with everybody, and really is really directly involved with me connecting with the guys all over again. And you know, I've done a lot of shows already, and we're going to be doing a lot more. So tell me about Bud. I know Bud is now in his mid to upper 80s, and I know he had a stroke a few years ago. Zoe was on the show a couple of days ago, and he said he's basically doing okay. And but he really... The
last time I saw him was at Eddie's 40th anniversary of being at the Improv, and Bud was there, and he was pretty sharp, knew who everybody was, and I was happy to see him. I love Bud. Bud is just Bud. You know, he was Bud, and I don't know. It was a strange dichotomy between Bud and Mark, because Mark was volatile, and Bud was not that volatile that I noticed. You know, and it was Bud thought, I don't know what Bud thought of me, but I think he liked me, because every time Mark would fire me, Bud wouldn't let him do it.
I guess he liked you.
I'd say he liked me.
Yeah, well, listen, you were always a likable guy. We weren't best friends or anything, but we liked each other. We respected each other. You know, I was there from 81 to 86, and I'm sure you were there a lot of those years. And you were also there for Evening at the Improv.
Yeah, I did a couple of evenings at the Improvs. Worked them, you know, made sure that. So I kind of weaseled my way into working there. When everybody quit, I became the oldest doorman. So I would just do things so I keep my job, basically, because I didn't want to get fired. So I would just take on more and more responsibility until finally I was basically just running the place at night. And that was fine with those guys.
So tell me about some of the memories you have of, you know, the guys that were even fairly well known. I mean, you were introducing everybody.
Yeah, I mean, everybody. Milton Berle would come in, and he'd want to go on stage, and he was in his late 80s, and you know, he's frail, and he would. So that first step going up to the stage, it was kind of slow. The second one was a little bit easier, and by the time he got to the third step, he was 40 years younger. Got on stage and did 45 minutes at his age.
Whoa!
That, you know, was miraculous. That I couldn't do 45 minutes at my age now. I can't remember anything. So I don't know how he did it, but it was amazing. And when he was done, that first step coming off the stage, he was still 40 years younger. By the time he hit the next two stages, he was back to 80 plus years old.
Oh, that's a great story. See, I never would have heard something like that. What else you got in your bag of tricks that you could share with us?
My bag of tricks.
It doesn't have to be as bold as that, but any of the things that you remember from those 80s.
Well, I remember, God, I remember Mort Saul used to have a show Monday nights after Off the Wall. And he was a terrific guy, Mort Saul. He's kind of old and frail, I think now. I heard he was not doing too good, but just a smart comic. He'd, come up there on that newspaper and he acted like he was just making that stuff up right now. Smart guy, nice guy, always had a smile on his face, never a bad word or anything.
And Jackie Mason, Jackie was at the club for a while there quite often.
Jackie was before, maybe I'd just gotten there with Jackie was still hanging. No, I don't think Jackie was there. Jackie and Bud had a little problem, so I tell you, I went to the doctor the other day, told me to take my clothes off. I told him, take me out first.
Well, listen, but no one's more accomplished than Jackie Mason.
He was a rabbi.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you a funny story about Jackie Mason that I don't know from the improv, but I know this from years ago. There was a cartoon on Saturday mornings called The Anteater. I don't know if you remember this or not.
No.
And it was anteater had a long schnoz and he was going around eating ants and he was talking. And Jackie Mason was the voice. And the Anti-Defamation League stopped the cartoon. And Jackie Mason went to him and said, "What are you doing? It's not anti-Semitic. I'm Jewish." And they still wouldn't let the cartoon stay on.
Wow. Very cool.
But yeah, everybody came through there that was popular at the time in the 80s.
What about when Robin came on stage?
Robin, he didn't want anybody to have to follow him. So he'd say, I'll wait till the last comic goes off and then I'll go up. And it was usually late, 1 o'clock, 1:15. And Robin I'd bring him up and he'd keep me up on stage with him to play around. Now, that's, it was just a complete honor for me, but I wasn't that good at improv like Rob. Well, nobody's as good as Robin. So you just try to feed him along, and do the best you can. And I would do that. He'd put me on his lap and I'd talk like Bud and he'd look like a ventriloquist act.
I know Rick Overton was a good friend of his. Rick's done the show and they did a lot of great improv together.
Oh yeah, Rick's a great improver. He can keep up with Robin. I was not that skilled. I really didn't have that much talent for that stuff. But Robin didn't care. He just, he loved to do it. And I had a news station from Indianapolis that called me up and said they wanted to come out and do a story on me because I was doing stand-up and working at the improv and all this stuff. And I said, oh, great. So I said, Robin, they're coming out to do a news story on me. I said, would you mind joining me on stage and playing around a little bit like we always do? And he goes, I'd love to.
Oh, wow.
So he came on stage and we played around and they got someplace around here, I got a great big videotape. It's about this thick,
That's a nice story. I like that. That's great.
The whole thing. Yeah, Robin was a great guy. I felt so bad when he got sick and, passed away, but it's a lot of them are gone. Sam, I remember the last time I saw Sam Kennison, I was at the Palm restaurant and Sam was there. He hugs me and something hit me in the chest and I go, open his jacket up and he's carrying a gun. I go, Sam, what the fuck's going on? He goes, they're after me, Howard. They're after me. I said, Sam, I whispered in his ear, I said, Sam, please stop doing the coke.
Yeah, he hurt himself.
Yeah.
What did you first think of him when you saw him, when he did his act?
I'll tell you a great story about that. I'm at the Comedy Store in Westwood. It's, I don't know, maybe 1:45. And Carl LeBeau and I are sitting in the back. There's 4 people in the audience. Okay, 2 of them are sleeping. And 2 of them I don't think are paying attention. And Sam gets up. Well, he goes crazy. He starts doing his stuff, and he's screaming and he's hollering, and I am laughing so hard. I mean, it's just hysterical. And finally, I've been laughing. And he's going on, and I'm laughing. I'm getting spasms in my stomach from laughing so hard. Now I'm on the floor of the Comedy Store in Westwood, and I'm pulling on Carl LeBeau's leg. And Carl, if you ever talk to Carl, I remember this. I'm pulling on his leg. I said, "Tell him to stop. I can't take it anymore." He
was really naturally funny.
Yeah, it's funny because funny story about Sammy. I met this guy at the cigar lounge that I used to have before COVID, and this pastor came in, and I said, I knew a guy who used to be a pastor. And he said, "Who's that?" I said, "Sam Kennison." He said, "I used to work with Sam Kennison doing preaching."
Oh, my God.
Matter of fact, I just had a cigar with the guy yesterday.
Wow.
So, yeah, there'll never be another time like the 80s, but there'll never be, and there's no way to explain or describe how hard it was to get anywhere. I mean, you had 2 minutes here, you had 2 minutes there, you had, Skippy Lowe had a showcase, and thank God he put you on for like 10 minutes. There was a place in the Valley, I can't remember what it was, a comedy, no, what was the name of the place in the Valley?
I don't remember.
Oh, geez, my mind. And you could go to all these places, and you were starving basically, because you couldn't get anything, you couldn't make any money doing that. You had to have another job.
Did you ever get any quick acting things, commercials?
I'll tell you a funny story. I got my agent for commercials was Betty Fanning, who was with the William Morris Agency. She was their top agent, and she had me, and she sent me out on my first commercial audition. And I do the audition. I come back. I call her on the phone. I said, "Betty, I got it." She goes, "Howard, no. Wait a minute, honey. It doesn't work like that. They'll call me. I'll call you and tell you if you got it." I said, "No, Betty, I got it." She goes, "It doesn't work like that." So she says, "I'll let you know if you got it." So she calls me back like 10 minutes later. She goes, "How did you know you had it?" I said, "The guy told me."
They don't usually do that, right?
No, they don't usually do it. It was Don. Oh, God, what was his name? Don. Oh, jeez. My mind I can't remember these people.
So did you end up doing a fair number of commercials?
I got the first one I ever went out on. I got put on hold for one. I got a Pizza Hut commercial, and they canceled me out and paid me my session fee. I never got another commercial. I must have gone out on thousands.
Oh my God.
Now I did a lot of acting because I was at the Improv and people saw me on stage. I did all the Robert Townsend specials. I was part of the Black Pack. All the Robert Townsend specials. I did a movie with Keenan Wayans, "I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker." Paul Rodriguez got me in a movie called The Whoopee Boys, Oscar winner. No. And then Rocco, remember Rocco? Rocco Ubersi?
No.
He got me a job playing Paul Schaefer to Joe Piscopo's David Letterman on a live television show called Vote 88. Now, I never worked with Joe, didn't even know Joe till that day, because Joe never came really to the Improv. And after we did the show, Joe goes, "I'm going to be doing David Letterman a lot. You're going to be my Paul Schaefer." Never heard from him again.
Oh. So tell me, Howard, what are some of your memories of? I remember as an agent, I would look at these guys and say, "He's going to make it," or, oh my God, he crashed on stage. You have any memories like that? Good, bad, ugly, pretty?
Okay, I got one. I mean, probably have more, but the only thing I can think of is Byron Allen. Byron, he was a television star, basically. He had that show, Real People. He never related to the audience with his comedy because he never understood that you had to change it, keep it current. He had this bit from front to start, and he had to do it completely. He could not do it any other way. So one day, he's about to go on. He was next to go on. Eddie Murphy comes in, and Bud goes, "Oh, Eddie, you want to go on?" And Eddie goes, "Yeah." So Bud says, "I'll put you up now." And Byron goes, "Please, no, let me go first." And Bud goes, "No, Eddie, you can follow Eddie." So Eddie goes up, and he didn't do that long, I don't think. I can't remember. Maybe he did 15 minutes. And he says, so I start to go upstairs, he's getting off. I start to go up the stairs to bring him off. And he goes, "Howard, let me bring up Byron." I said, "Yeah, go ahead, Eddie." So Eddie's trying to soften the blow between Eddie Murphy and Byron Allen. So he'll bring him up. So he brings him up and shakes his hand and says, and he turns around and he goes, "I've never been on stage before while another comic works." He sat down on the stool. So Byron is just standing there looking at him. So Bruce Willis happened to stick his face in the showroom at that time. And I said, "Bruce, take this chair and run up on stage." So Bruce runs up on stage.
Wow.
And then Keenan, I gave chair to Keenan. I said, "Keenan, run up on stage with this chair." And he does. And Kevin Nealon grabbed the chair and ran up on stage. And then Whoopi was in the bathroom. I'm knocking on the bathroom door. "Whoopi, get out here."
Oh my God.
He goes, "What's going on?" I said, "Here, take this chair and run up on stage." So now we got all these guys up on stage. And Byron is still standing there. And so now Eddie and all of them on stage start going, "Byron, Byron, Byron." Now the audience is going, "Byron, Byron." They're chomping their feet. And he's just standing there. And I'm sitting in the back at the sound booth going, "Byron, take the microphone off the stand and start interviewing these stars. You were on Real People, for crying out loud." Well, he couldn't do anything. He was just dumbfounded. So they all got off, and half the audience left. And today, Byron Allen is a billionaire.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here with a dog and a cat and a mobile home.
Yeah. Yeah, he's done a lot. I see his comedy shows all the time.
Gotta hand it to him.
And was there somebody, like I saw Jim Carrey on the Improv, and I said, this is before anybody really knew anything of him. I said, "This guy is incredible." Did you have any memories of being?
Yeah, I don't remember when I first saw him. I think he came in, he's from Canada, and I think he came in on a Sunday night, and Bud said, Bud had told me that he was coming from Canada and I should put him up on audition night. And yeah, he was just pure, he was very good. But most people that you could see were comfortable on stage and had a way with the audience, and the audience would appreciate them. They were the ones that, rose above like the cream on top of the milk. David Spade, he used to come in And he said, "Sorry, I'm late, but my mother just had dropped me off," because he looked like he was 12 years old.
Yeah.
Adam Sandler, when he first started, I said, "This guy is, he just." I said, "Where is this guy going with this stuff?" But he's going quite well with it. Dennis Miller. Now, see, I think Dennis Miller was the smartest person I've ever met. This guy used words that I didn't even know existed. And bright guy, funny too. And his brother Jimmy used to work for me as a doorman.
Yeah. I mean, when I used to book comedy clubs, I used to work with Jimmy. And I don't know how this happened with Dennis, because Dennis was obviously a real down-to-earth Pittsburgh guy. I might have said this on another show. I have a memory of going across the street with Dennis, across from the Improv, sitting on a curb for an hour just talking.
Yeah.
He was just a regular guy and a great guy. And, whatever we were saying, we were there for an hour.
He just sold his house to Ellen DeGeneres.
Okay.
For $69 million in Santa Barbara.
Okay.
Yeah, he's done well.
All right.
So
what else? What else, man? Anything you want to leave the viewers with before we go?
Oh, it's time to go already? There was just all kinds of things. Rosie O'Donnell, she was in the hallway one day and she looked kind of sad. I said, "What's the matter, Rosie?" She goes, "Well, I just got offered a job as a VJ on MTV, and my manager told me not to take it." And I said, "Well, let's take a look at this. What is a VJ?" She goes, "Well, I have a show every day, for an hour, whatever it was, and I'm on television basically every day for however long it was, an hour, 2 hours, whatever it was." And I said, "And why your manager doesn't want you to take it?" She goes, "I don't know." I said, "Well, fire the manager and take the job." I don't know if she fired the manager, but she took the job.
Nice. Good.
So, and I used to go to Vegas, when Bud had the Improv in Vegas, and John Panette. I don't know if you know John Panette.
Yeah, sure.
If he was around when you were there. John Panette was probably the funniest guy. Just sitting next to him, he was the funniest guy. So he didn't drive. So Bud would book us in Vegas together because I could drive him and he didn't live too far from my house or my apartment. So I don't care, or I don't care. I don't know how many times I had to pull off the road to Vegas because he had me laughing so hard I couldn't drive the car.
Love that.
He's just a funny guy. Just a funny guy. I miss John. He passed away a few years ago. But a lot of them are gone now.
It's one of the reasons why I'm doing the show is, a lot of the guys are in their 60s. Hopefully I'll get to a couple even in their 70s. And I want to hear what that was like from their own memories and points of view.
Well, I was older when I got to Hollywood. So yeah, I am in my 70s. I met everybody there. I met Dreesen, who I've been friends with for 40 years. I used to play golf with him. I used to play golf with Frankie Avalon. Used to play golf with Dreesen and a bunch of guys. I guess besides comedy and golf, that's basically how I lived.
Not so bad, man. Not so bad.
Yeah, well, I probably should have done a little more working. So I have a little softer life in the retirement years.
Yeah. That's an issue that Zoe and I brought up the other day, that, the actors have their way of getting relief, and the older age homes and the retirement homes for actors and actresses, and even anyone who's worked in a film could have lived in that. I don't even know if it's still there. The
Actors Home in Woodland Hills. It's there.
Woodland Hills. but
Yeah.
comedians have nothing. And I'm going to dedicate
No,
the rest
but
of my
I would
life.
say most of the comedians are probably in the Screen Actors Guild. I know I am. I've been in since the 80s. Matter of fact, they retired me.
Yeah, that's great. So if you needed to go to the Woodland Hills, you could eventually?
I could, yes.
Oh, very nice.
I believe so. I don't know. But Zoe, tell you a funny story about Zoe. I'm at the Improv. This is long after I'm not working there. It's in the 90s. And there was a new doorman or something at the door. And Zoe wanted to get in. And the doorman said, "I'm sorry, I can't let you in." And so I see her standing there. I said, "What's the matter?" She goes, "They won't let me in." And I go, "What?" So I go up to this doorman who was big guy. And I said, "Do you know who this is?" And he goes, "No." I go, "Well, you probably should. This is Bud's daughter, and you should let her in." And he goes, "Oh, okay. You can ask Zoe about it. She remembers."
I'm
They
surprised.
they wouldn't let her in a club her father owned.
Yeah, she's turned out to be quite a lady, and she's, pretty accomplished. She told me I didn't know about the documentary she did of the 50-year anniversary. I saw it the other day. It was fantastic. Great job.
Yeah, she's quite talented. Quite talented.
She's had a good training, good background.
Ah, she's a nice lady too.
So
I'll tell you another story I remember.
Great.
I got off stage one night, and I'm walking up to the front of the restaurant, to the Improv, and this cute little old lady stops me, and she goes, "My son had the same look in his eyes when he was on stage." And I go, I thought she was some, goofball or something. I didn't know who she was. So I said, "Oh, thanks." I said, "Who's your son?" She says, "Lenny Bruce."
Oh, nice.
She became I was quite close to her after that. She's very nice. Sally Fields, not Sally Field, Sally Marr.
Very nice. Listen, man, I really enjoyed this. I'm glad that we connected, and glad we got to do a show together. And it's wonderful to hear your side of things, from where you came from and who you were and how you did it. So I really appreciate you spending time with me today.
I might have been farther along if you'd have booked me in a couple of jobs.
Well, that's the one thing I say to myself is I wish I worked a little harder for everybody I had.
It's good seeing you.
Yeah, it was great. Howard, take care. Thanks you so much.
I want final approval on the cut.
Yes, we'll do just fine. We'll do great.
Okay.
80s golden age of comedy. I'm Bruce Starr. Take care, everybody. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.